محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين سيما الحجة بقية الله الأعظم، روحي وأرواحنا له فداء، ولعنه دائم على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Since it's the last night that I could be at your service, so I just want to ask you for forgiveness if there was any shortcomings, if I wasted your time these last 10 nights. And if I said something which you consider to be inappropriate, if I said something which was incorrect, then I will ask for your forgiveness and the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and appreciate your efforts, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless and accept the efforts of all the volunteers and all the participants, all the people that showed up for 10 nights in a row, especially this late, and to be a part of the program. May Allah accept your efforts, inshaAllah ta'ala, and make sure that we will, inshaAllah ta'ala, get reunited by Abdul alayhi salam and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, the day of judgment, inshaAllah ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So since it's the night which is attributed to Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, I thought maybe it would be a good idea to speak about, first and foremost, about his life, speak about and understand one of the most important aspects of the life of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, which is related to the concept of dua. Because as you know, when we look at Aimma alayhi salam, there was always something special for each one of them. So if you look at Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, it was at the time of his government, for example. We focus a lot on the bravery and the courage of Imam Ali alayhi salam, him being a caliph in his time, being a politician, and at the same time very, very eloquent, his sermons, his letters, and so on and so forth. When we look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the same applies to him as well. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Sayyid al-Shuhada, we think of him as a shaheed, and the leaders of all shuhada, all martyrs throughout the history of Islam. And then for each Imam, there's something that makes them stand out, as if they complete each other as well. When it comes to Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, there's one aspect in his life that makes him stand out as well. And that's the concept of dua. That's the concept of dua. Hence we have a book which is attributed to Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, also called Sahifatu Sajjadiyah. A lot of the supplications that we recite is from Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, whether it's on Layal al-Qadr or just in general Sahifatu Sajjadiyah. We see that most of them are attributed to Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. So why is it like that? You see, in the Holy Quran we have a verse which I mentioned in the Q&A as well. What is that? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu alaykum anfusakum. O you who believe, take care of yourself. In other words, focus on your own self-improvement. Some people, they understand this as being, okay, I just have to focus on my individual responsibility, don't care about the society. Or that it's a prerequisite for me to work on the society or being active in the society is that I'll focus on my self-improvement as well. And that's true to a certain extent. But sometimes the two things are in continuation of each other. let's say, for example, your self-improvement, if that's conditioned by you taking a responsibility in your society, are you not supposed to do that? You're just supposed to be home, for example, sit home, don't care about the society, don't care about the community? Or no, do you have a responsibility when it comes to the society? And how is dua related to that? Because when we think of dua, we normally think of dua as being something which is between me and my Lord. It doesn't really matter whether the community is there or not, or I'm active in the community or not. But you see, that's not the case. From the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam, it was quite clear. All the Imam alayhi salam, they focused on the community, they focused on the society, and the social responsibility that they had. The same applies to Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. He was no different. The only thing is that he lived in a time where his responsibility was much more restricted compared to the other Imam alayhi salam. In one sense, you see, in the time of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, just to speak about this verse, alaykum anfusakum, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa he explained this verse himself. So Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he acted in accordance to the teachings of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa and he listened to the Holy Prophet exactly, like you can't even differ between the two in that sense. How? When the Prophet, one of the companions, he asked about this verse, alaykum anfusakum, he said, but then he asked the Prophet, so what does that mean? That we should stop enjoying good and forbidding that which is evil? The Prophet said, no. He said, if you live in a society where there's a ruler, there's a tyrant who doesn't allow you to enjoy good and forbid evil, and you're not willing or you can't even accept the difficulties that comes with it, and all the roads to success or to get familiar with Islamic teachings are blocked basically, and because of this ruler, then alaykum anfusakum, then you focus on your self-improvement. And that's exactly what Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he did, but in continuation of that, he also facilitated the possibility for the movement as well. So you see, Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, one of the beautiful things that he did, which even the Hakim of Medina at that time, he started to question, what was that? He used to buy a lot of slaves, educate them, and he would free them. According to one historical report, which says that he freed up to, I think it was 50,000 slaves during his 30 years in Medina. 50,000 slaves. He bought them, educated them, and all the 50,000 slaves that he bought, educated, and freed afterwards, they became his followers. They became the exact same community and the wave of Shia who ended up being followers of who? Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq or Imam Baqir alayhi salam. And therefore, and therefore wrote down all the narrations that we have. Yeah? So we are familiar with Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam today. Or else we wouldn't even have narrations if it wasn't because of the efforts of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, through a concept which is called dua. And look, even dua had a social, political aspect to it as well. Why? Because in the time of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, they weren't allowed to send their salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But one of the ways you can find out whether this supplication is attributed to Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, that is, if you read between the lines, now and then he always sends what? He recites salawat. All the time. All the time. You see dua for Abu Hamza al-Tamari, for example. Yeah. Always in between you always find a salawat here and there. And he did that in a mosque, in a society where it wasn't allowed to do so. So even through his dua, he took care of his social and political responsibilities. So now's the question, what is the importance of dua? What is the importance of dua? This concept, which Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he utilized to nurture or raise thousands of Shia who became the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, who paved the way and facilitated a university for Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, so he could write down thousands of narrations that we'll get to it today for his followers for centuries to come. How did he utilize, and what was the importance of dua? That goes back to the importance or that which we were created with as human beings. And what was that? You see, human beings were created with needs, but also we are created with attachments. So we have emotions and we have love for certain things. But our needs and attachment doesn't always go hand in hand. Sometimes we have a need for something, but because I don't love the aim or the goal of that need, or a specific way to satisfy that need, I don't care about that need anymore. Or sometimes it's a conflict between two types of attachments, two types of love that makes you abstain from that, satisfying that need. The best example is in the holy month of Ramadan. We have a need to consume food, for example, or water, but we abstain. Because of what? Because of greater attachment for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We want to seek proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, we are willing to abstain from what? Certain types of food and water and so on and so forth. And the same applies to knowledge as well. The same applies to knowledge as well. In what sense? Sometimes we carry around certain types of knowledge, but if we don't have an attachment, we're not going to benefit from that knowledge. Or if there's a conflict between our knowledge and that which we love, then obviously we're going to go for that which we love. How many people do not act against that which they know of because of an attachment? I see that all the time, the youth, amongst the youth, yeah? Like, why do you do that? It's bad for your health? And I love it. I have an attachment to it. I'm addicted to it. There's an attachment that prevents a person from what? Acting upon the knowledge. And even when it comes to doing what? Actions. What was the importance of actions? We spoke about for several days. Actions, respected brothers and sisters, are only important because they are there to manage that which you love. That which you love. Your interests and your attachments as a human being. And some attachments, they're natural. You're born with it. Some attachments, no. You have to nurture them. You have to nurture them. They're like shooting stars. You have to catch them. You have to be careful. You have to stand by it. Don't get away from it. As soon as you think of something which is a positive attachment, move on. No, don't stop for a minute. Hold on for a minute. Nurture that attachment. Why? Because it's a shooting star. It's going to disappear. You're not going to see it again. And then you've got certain attachments where you need to distract yourself, just like a child. Have you seen children? You need to distract their attention all the time, catch their attention all the time. Yeah? Some attachments are like that. Or sometimes you have to act in a certain way like that because you have to be superior to your attachments as a human being. You have to be superior to attachments, or else you're not able to benefit from your knowledge. You're not able to benefit from all the positive traits and qualities that you have as a human being. If you're not willing, or if you can't manage your attachments and your love. That's why it's so important. Human beings, we don't only consist of need and knowledge and a free will. No, we have something even greater than that. And even our free will, if we can't, as human beings, manage our attachments and our love, even our free will is completely, it doesn't make sense. It loses its value. Because if you ask a person, why do we have a free will? It's like, so I can choose between different things. But you will always go with that which you have an attachment for. So if you're not able to control and manage your love and attachments, what does it even make sense to have a free will then? Because you always go for that which you have an attachment. Managing your attachment holds the greatest priority as a human being, for a human being. Because then you're able to benefit from your knowledge. Then you're able to benefit from your free will. Then you're able to benefit from your actions even. And you can act based on motivation and affection for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And sometimes you need to distract yourself. Why? Because we got some negative attachments as well. Sometimes you have to resist certain attachments. This is all based on narrations, that what I'm telling you right here. I just can't mention all the narrations right now because then we won't have time for the Q&A even. But sometimes you have to resist when it comes to certain attachment. You have to stand up to it. Be like, no. Give it a punch in the face. I'm not going to submit myself to this attachment. Sometimes, no. You have to be logical with that attachment. Be like, look, I know you're seeking this or you have a love for this, but you have to be clever here. Look at the long-term consequences of you submitting to your desire here. Sometimes you have to be logical. Sometimes you have to distract their attention away from it. Sometimes, no, you have to resist. You have to be strong. And sometimes you have to nurture that. Why? Because if it's a positive attachment, once there was a brother, I was speaking to him, I was like, we had a conversation and we were talking about Medina, being in Medina, because we came back from Umrah. He said, how beautiful wouldn't it be if we were in Medina right now, next to Baqi, next to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, and we just, Muhammad. And straight away he said, so what's for dinner? I was like, wait a minute. Nurture this attachment, it's a positive one. It's a good one. It's a good attachment. Don't be like, quick, what's for dinner? Some of our youth, unfortunately, because of our concentration span, we're not able to actually nurture for the good attachment, the positive ones. Imagine you being in Karbala, for example, Ziyarah Bab Abdullah alayhi salam. You would love that. Think about it for a second. Sometimes, especially when it comes to this worldly life, the thought of something is sweeter than the reality. But that's when it comes to something which is spiritual, something which is related to the hereafter, the reality is sweeter than the thought. You have an ability as a human being to find an affection and a love for something just by thinking of it, thinking about it. And we experienced that in the holy month of Ramadan. How? When we walk into a supermarket, we pass by restaurants, for example, when we're fasting. Yeah? The thought is sweeter than the reality. Why? Because we think of 10 types of cuisines and different food. But as soon as we finish our iftar, we can't even gonna puke if you give us more food. We can't even we're gonna get sick if people speak about food even. Yeah? Why? Because the thought was sweeter than the reality. When it comes to spiritual matters, no. The reality is always sweeter than the thought. So you have that ability. Utilize it for that purpose. Nurture that attachment which is positive for you. It's very important that we do that. That we nurture it. And you can look, any person that tells you, I can't control my anger, you tell them, that's because you can't manage your attachments, the love that you have. You don't have control over your emotions. If you see an arrogant person, it's because of the lack of management or him being able to control his attachments and his love. That's why he became arrogant. Because arrogance is nothing but a desire for seeking greatness, and you think you have achieved it, therefore you think you're better than other individuals. In other words, it's rooted in what? Your attachments. So the lack of control over your attachment made you an arrogant person. So whether it's arrogance, whether it's anger, whether it's the lack of patience, whether it's jealousy or anything else, it's because of the lack of what? Lack of ability to actually control your emotions and your attachments and that which you have a love for. That which you have a love for. So now's the question, Sheikhna. So now we understand that managing or administrating our attachments and our love holds the greatest priority. In fact, the definition of a good person is a person who has the ability to manage what he loves. That's the definition of a good person. Why? Because we mentioned the verse, what is it? The only thing that we will be left with is that which we strive for. Let me tell you something. A step further than that. You only strive for that which you have an attachment for. Simple. In other words, make sure that you administrate your attachments, yeah, and you will strive for the right things in life. That's simple. So a good person is what? A person who knows how to administrate that which he has a love for. He knows how to administrate that which goes on in his heart. That's the definition of a good person. That's the definition of a good person. That's why Imam Zayn al-Abidin himself, he said, don't look at people not committing sins and be like, okay, they must be good people. Why? Because they're abstaining from sins. So no, because sometimes it's because of his weakness. He's just too incompetent to commit sins, this person. He's too stupid to commit sins. Therefore he's not committing sins. That's not the definition of a good person, no. Look at the person who actually is competent enough and have the ability to commit sins, yet he's abstaining. Yet he's abstaining. That's a strong person. That's a virtuous person. The person that knows how to lie and how much he can benefit from it, yet he's going to abstain. Why? Because he knows that it's going to hurt his relationship to Allah. That's a strong person. So even the definition of a good human being is what? Somebody who knows how to administrate his attachments. So how is that related to dua? How is that related to dua? Respected brothers and sisters, there's no tool more effective than to control your attachment and the love that you have than dua. Dua is the most effective tool for you to control and manage your attachment and that which you have a love for. Because what is dua? What is it that you want in this world? Yeah? You write it down and you sit and you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. That's dua basically. What do you want? Doing ziyarah? Yeah? Permissible pleasures, for example. You want to enjoy them? Write it down, turn it into a dua. In other words, what you do, you practice speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by focusing as a part of your self-improvement. You start to look and discover the different attachments that you have in your heart. Dua helps you create a table of contents of your heart and the attachments that resides within your heart. That's dua. That's dua. And sometimes it even helps you to evaluate a lot of the attachments. Why? Because then you got du'as and supplications from Ahlul Bayt alayhi wasallam, where they show you what you should be given in importance. They show you what you should find important. And then when you look at the things that you desire yourself and you compare it to that which they asked for, and you see that, no, maybe those desires that I had are not that important anymore. In other words, they give you the ability to evaluate your desires and your attachments as well. That's the whole philosophy about dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, basically what He does, He tells you, recite this because you're going to make a table of contents of your own heart. Everything that resides within your heart, and you're going to see it in front of your own face. In other words, you will be able to administrate it. Don't be like the person who shows up at work, the boss who shows up at work, and they be like, oh, so anybody had anything to say? No, you were the one supposed to plan. You were the one supposed to administrating. You were the one supposed to put out a plan or administrate the affairs at work. You're the one supposed to do that. Don't be like, no, so anybody had anything to say? No, don't do that. You know, it's not a discussion about whether you're convinced or not. You know, some people, when they go to the gym and they work out, if they have a personal trainer, they're going to like, no, you have to convince me first before I start lifting your weights. Get out of here. You're not going to improve anything. If you want to be convinced, no, I have to be 100% convinced. No, you lift the weights and you'll see the effects of it. What is it that you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for? Try to contemplate upon the verses or the lines of the supplications we have from Ahlul Bayt alayhi wasallam, and you'll find out straight away whether that which you prioritize in life makes sense or not, whether you're supposed to prioritize it or not. That's what dua does. That's the beauty of dua. Not only that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you how much you actually want it, because as soon as you start asking Allah for something, He would ask you how much you actually want it. How much do you desire that which you are asking for? Let me see. And then you find out whether it's important for you. Because if you're able to shed tears for that which you're asking for, that means that you're serious about it. But if you're not, if you just recite it as if, let's say for example, we show up for Layal al-Qadr, we recite a dua as if it's a newspaper. And we keep looking at the last page when we're going to finish this dua, you know, when does it finish, yeah? If we do that, obviously, then we know we're not sincere about what we're asking for. It doesn't hold a priority for us. It's not important for us. That's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once he saw a companion and he kept like silencing his child, he told the child to be quiet. The child was crying. The Prophet said, no, let the child cry. You know why the Prophet ﷺ, he loved when children, they used to shed tears and cry? Because it reminded him of how you're supposed to seek closeness to Allah. If you're sincere and you really want that which you desire, you'll be able to cry about it straight away. Children, they have such a strong attachment to the parents. When they want their parents, it's not an issue for them to shed tears. They do it straight away. Nothing happened, they start shedding tears straight away. Ahlul Bayt alayhi wasallam, when we read about how they actually shed tears in their prayers, for example, when they were reciting dua, you see the exact same thing applies here as well. They were able to shed tears in an instant. Why? Because they truly desired that which they were asking for. It wasn't just like us, for example, sitting and reading a newspaper, or myself at least. Alhamdulillah, you're much better than that. It wasn't like that. Imam alayhi salam, Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, how he used to shed tears reciting dua. Imam Hussein alayhi salam on Yawm al-Arafah, the famous dua Arafah, it's narrated in the dua itself that the tears were falling down his cheeks. He was shedding tears throughout the all of the dua. He was shedding tears. So through dua we can evaluate that which we have an interest for, our attachments, that which we love. Not only that, we can find out how sincere we are as well. How affected we are by the dua and what we are asking for as well. And we can manage that. Amir al-Mu'minin in the beautiful narration, he states, Al-ilmu al-qa'id, knowledge is a guide, wal-amal as-sa'iq, and your actions are the driver, wal-nafs al-harun, and the ego is that stubborn donkey that tries to pull you in every direction. In other words, your main responsibility is to do what? Manage your interests and your attachments. If you get in control of that, you can benefit from your knowledge and you can benefit from your actions. And the concept of dua is basically the best and the most effective tool to do that. The most effective tool to do that. So you can administrate your attachments. Why? Because you list down all the attachments that you have in life and you prioritize. And you compare it to that which Aimma alayhi wasallam asked for, and then you can prioritize. This is important, this is not important. You can evaluate, basically. Dua gives you that ability. But unfortunately, because we stuck with superficial pleasures and attachments, we don't find that pleasure in dua. So consider dua as being a tool for your own self-improvement. Then it makes it easier for you to actually recite a dua. With this mindset, try open Sahifa Sajjadiyya and read some lines of Sahifa Sajjadiyya. With this mindset. Dua prioritize the same thing as Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. Or no? Do I prioritize something way different? Do I have an attachment for that which Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam is asking for? Or no? Or my attachments like in a whole other place or for something else? Something else. I'll give you something from Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam himself, and you understand the point here, because he emphasizes the point. That's why we have in a narration that states about dua, when they define dua, they say, dua mukhul ibadah. Dua, supplications, are the essence of worship. Why? Because you get to manage your attachments as a human being. Only a person who is able to manage his attachments as a human being is able to see closeness to Allah. Why? Because if you keep acting and keep weakening the positive attachments and strengthening the negative ones, how will you be able to find that proximity or that closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that love and affection for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that motivates you to practice Islam, that motivates you to look at the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as being the biggest blessing in life? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do it? You're not able to do so then. That's why Imam Zayn al-Abidin, what is it that he asks for? In one of his munajat, he says, أَسْأَلُكَ حُبَّكَ وَحُبَّ مَنْ يُحِبُّكَ. I'm asking for your love and the love of anybody who loves you. So I want to love you, but at the same time, all the people that love you as well. From the first prophet to the last imam, inshaAllah ta'ala, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasten his reappearance. I want the love of all these individuals. And then he continues, وَحُبَّ كُلِّ عَمَلٍ يُوصِلُنِي إِلَىٰ قُرْبِكَ. And the love of every action that brings me closer to you. You're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do what? To give you the ability to manage that which you love. That which you have an affection for. That which you're attached to. That's the whole discussion of the philosophy of dua and supplication. It's summed up in the words of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. And he continues, make yourself dear to me than anything else. Make yourself dear to me than anything else. And make my love for you a guide for you to your pleasure. Even when it comes to my pleasure, I'm asking you for the pleasure. I'm not trying to seek it in things that will not be able to satisfy my need as a human being. Like all these material things. Sometimes we try to fill out a spiritual void through material things. It's a spiritual void that you have within yourself. A car's not going to satisfy your need. A house is not going to satisfy your need. Sometimes, like there was a guy, he said, Sheikh, I think I need tranquility in my life. So I was like, how are you going to satisfy that need then? He said, I'm going to buy a house. You think you're going to get tranquility for buying a house? Or yes, it's going to bring some comfort to you, but that's not how you find tranquility. Because how many bedrooms you need? You're only going to need one bedroom. You want 15 bedroom? How are you going to, like, even in the practical terms, you're going to sleep in every bed, like switch from every like night, you're going to go to another room? I'm not going to do that. Tranquility starts from within, not by your surroundings. If you're conditioned or you're, what is it called? You're limited by your surroundings, you're not going to have tranquility. Because this world cannot provide you tranquility. He continues, let my longing for you prevent me from disobeying you, being disobedient towards you. Just the fact that we get the love and we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we strengthen that affection, yeah, that itself prevents us from being disobedient, committing sins all the time. And then he continues, وَالشَّوْقِ إِلَيْكَ ذَائِدًا عَنْ إِسْيَانِكَ, that's what I told you. وَالنُّمْ بِنَظَرِ إِلَيْكَ عَلَيَّ, and look upon you with the eyes of affection and compassion. وَلَا تُصْرِفْ وَلَا تَسْرِفْ عَنِّي وَجْهَكِ, do not turn your face away from me. In other words, I need your attention. This is the words of who? Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. He teaches us how to speak to Allah and to obtain the strength enough to manage our what? Attachments. That which we love. That which we love. Sometimes the youth, they ask me, especially when they come back from ziyarah. So after we came back from Umrah in May, some of the youth, they was like, Sheikh, now I've never experienced this before. I was like, what happened? It's like, just as we came back from Umrah, and I didn't even think about this sin, subhanAllah, suddenly, like it is as if shaitan, he just paved the way for me to commit a specific sin. Then I told him, according to the dua of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, it's sufficient for you just not to chase it. Don't chase it and you'll be successful. In one of the lines of Dua Abu Hamza, what is it that we read? Every time opportunity to commit a sin was in front of me, I chased it. I chased the sin basically. Just prevent yourself from chasing sins. That itself will make you a great person. That itself will make you a successful person. Even when it comes to negative attachment you don't want to have, du'as can help you, the supplications can help you administrate that as well. Listen to this. وَأَنَا جَاهِلُ الَّذِي عَلِمْتَ, I'm the ignorant one, which you gave knowledge. Even that's acknowledging your shortcomings to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He would embrace you and make up for the shortcomings that you have. Because He's the only one that has the strength and the power to do that. Nobody else can do that. Because knowledge goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't think that it's something to do with your brain. Your brain is not the owner of the knowledge that you possess. Or else if it's yours and you can't separate it from you, then when you fall down from the bike and your head hits the pavement, for example, make sure that you don't lose your knowledge. You can't. You're going to lose the knowledge, you're going to be brain dead, we're not the owner of these things. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's the only owner of these things. And then he continues, وَأَنَا ضَلُّ الَّذِي هَدَيْتَ, I'm the misguided person which you have guided. Even the negative attachments that you have, whether it's ignorance, whether it's being misguided, sins that are being committed. So whenever there was an opportunity to commit a sin, whenever there's an opportunity to commit a sin, we just have to prevent ourselves from chasing it. Chasing it. That's it. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will make us successful inshallah. That's sufficient. So respected brothers and sisters, what are supplications? Supplications are the most effective tools in order for us to manage our attachments. The definition of a good person is a person who is able and has the control of his attachments, who have the control over the things that he loves or she loves. That's a good person. You're not able to benefit from your knowledge, your free will, or your actions if you don't have control over your attachments. And there's nothing better and more effective to do that than your supplications, especially the supplications from Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. And that's exactly why Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, that was the part that he focused on the most, supplications. because it nurtured and raised a whole generation of followers of Ahlul Bayt at that time. At that time. So they paved the way from Imam Baqir, for Imam Baqir alayhi salam, and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. This was the movement of who? Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. This was the movement of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. How he worked with people. How he worked with people. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq inshaAllah ta'ala and the strength to administrate our attachments, that which we have a love for, and give us the ability, inshaAllah, to seek closeness to Him through administrating our attachment and the things that we love. So we hopefully, inshaAllah ta'ala, can benefit from supplications and utilize supplications in order to do that and to be guided, inshaAllah ta'ala. So before seeking advice on anything, respected brothers and sisters, try to write down that which you desire and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. Some people, they have a tendency to hasten towards like seeking advice. Sheikh, no, this, that, no. Try to speak to Allah about it first and foremost. Maybe you will come up with a solution yourself. And then you don't need people like you to give you an advice on anything. Just write it down, ask Allah for it. Then you find out how He embraces you, inshaAllah, and how He will solve your issue as well. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
So I think we the Q&A now, or we're gonna inshallah. Inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Just to let you know, the Azan and Watan will be for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then inshallah we're going to get into Q&A inshallah. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. يا مغلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على حب الحسين، ثبت قلبي على حب الحسين، ثبت قلبي على حب الحسين. مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على حب الحسين، ثبت قلبي على حب الحسين، ثبت قلبي على حب مقلب القلوب. يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي